It's been happening all year. You know what they did. In a must-win series, the San Diego Padres lose 3 out of 4 games to the Arizona Diamondbacks, all but completely erasing their playoff hopes officially, I would say. Talking about those games and talking a little bit about Ha-Seong Kim, the greatest consolation prize to a failed season ever. And then the Padres making some moves in the farm, making some promotions. So we got stuff to talk about. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, August 21st. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, that's Javiipeno, or if you want only baseball stuff, don't worry, I got you covered with all sorts of good memes and dreams over at LO_Padres. You could also check out the YouTube channel if you prefer the video version of this podcast. I know some folks very much do, so shouts to those folks. I appreciate you. And also, you might like my shirt that I'm wearing today. It's like Stitch in a Wolverine costume. It's one of my favorites. I love this shirt. It's so silly. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by also Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed over at Game Time. And also, I want to remind everybody to go check out SiriusXM for live broadcasts of the San Diego Padres. You can listen to the play-by-play broadcast of the game, and also search up the old podcasts for Locked On Padres if you like that too. Ooh, man, what a weekend! It actually, I must commend the Padres this time, because we didn't have to suffer every day of our weekend. You know what I mean? We had a little bit of the suffering on Thursday, and then we had all of it, just get it out of the way on Saturday. We got to at least enjoy a lazy Sunday. Assuming, of course, you aren't, I hope everyone's doing, for all my West Coast listeners, I know we've got some big hurricane stuff going on. Hurricane Hillary out in California, so hopefully everybody's good. I know I've got some friends down there. Hopefully everybody's hanging out. But in terms of everybody else, just in terms of the, how everybody's feeling and vibes about the team, that was kind of nice, that we don't have to suffer on Sunday. But again, I must emphasize, I hope everyone's hanging in there tough during these very strenuous weather times out there. But the Padres, let me tell you, man, they didn't make anybody feel better as a whole. I mean, I'm mostly just kidding. Just because they had an off day on Sunday doesn't erase really any of the feeling from this weekend. They lose 3 out of 4 games to the Arizona Diamondbacks in what was pretty much, not even ostensibly, just straight up like a must-win series. The Padres were, it's so funny how much, how predictable this team has been. It has proven every cynic correct. I mean, this is a team that, not too long ago, what is this basically a few days before the deadline, yeah, they had that really bad series against Pittsburgh, but they had won 2 out of 3 for a lot of their previous series. They won 2 out of 3 against Toronto. That's a really good high-scoring team. They won 2 out of 3 against the Tigers. Yes, they mess up against Pittsburgh, and then they get the Rangers sweep, which might have propelled the team into thinking maybe we still have a chance. We have good, offensive stats. We're 10th in runs or whatever it is. We're 10th in on base percentage. They're 15th in runs. We have pretty average stats. We've got star players. Let's try to make a run for it. And then what happens after that? Well, firstly, got to give them credit. They managed to slay the demon known as the Colorado Rockies, winning 2 out of 3. And then after that, they just showed you exactly what every cynic has believed all along, which is that this team isn't any good. They lose 3 out of 4 games against the Dodgers. Admittedly, one of those games was lit because they made a crazy 7-run comeback or whatever. That was awesome, but they get blown out by LA. Then they lose 2 to Seattle. And then, in what I called, this was my official, this is it. I've been believing ever since the Dodgers series, it was officially over. Honestly, I thought it was over before the deadline in a lot of ways. Not in the technical sense. They actually still technically have a shot at the playoffs. But my thing was, I just, okay, this is the last-ditch effort. You can listen to my podcast before then. This is it. This is the final countdown. This will be it. This will be, if they want to make a run, it has to be here. because they had a series up against the Diamondbacks for 3. Then they had a home series against the Diamondbacks for 4. And they're able to win only 2 of those 7 games. And I talked about this past... I missed Friday with some emergency kind of family issues, but with Thursday's episode, I talked about, like, the Fangraphs playoffs odds. For the longest time, I've had the Padres around like 38%. Like, they still were up there because I think Fangraphs looked at all of their baseline stats and were just like, this team should be better. They have a great run differential. They play amazing defense. They have really good starting pitching, and they've at least got Josh Hader in the bullpen, right? So that was kind of what I think those projections were based on. And I think that anyone who's actually watched this team, though, should know and would have known that those Fairgraphs projection odds were actually like way too high, it felt like, for this team, because this team has shown no fight, no ability to make comebacks basically all year long. They've had one, it was against the Dodgers recently, and then they have the Ha-Seong walk-off early on in the season. But other than that, the team just doesn't want to win, straight up. Like, they just don't want to win. They practically look like they don't care out there. And I'm not saying they literally think that. I think they're trying. But it certainly gives off that vibe. And, every time something bad happens or someone criticizes the team, Machado starts, saying everybody hates us and blah, 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 and then getting annoyed at people bringing this up, when he's been one of the least clutch players in baseball after being one of the more clutch ones last year, which is so crazy. But, yeah, them losing 3 out of 4 here. They get 1 win on Friday. But, I mean, where do we even begin? I think that I've been very bullish on the belief that firing Bob Melvin is a mistake. My thing is, it reminds me of, when you're playing fantasy sports, someone asks you, like, should I drop this guy? He's been terrible. And then you're like, okay, but in exchange for what? Who would you like to pick up to replace? And this would then be, if Melvin were fired, that would now give Preller, it would mean it would be the 4th manager that he's hired, which is pretty unprecedented for general managers to be sticking around that long before ownership and stuff is like, actually, maybe we should get rid of the GM. Just an idea, you know what I mean? Like, especially in such a short time frame. That's not like Preller's been the GM for 40 years or anything like that, right? He's not Brian Cashman. And I will say, though, that this weekend did show, I don't know if this is him making the decisions entirely. I think people have, mostly talked about just throughout baseball that GMs have a little bit more of a play these days on deciding things and what's going to happen. At least it depends on the organization, of course. But, in Thursday's game, the Padres, this is kind of a must win. And I think it's weird that they're starting Rich Hill. I do. Did they think that this was a throwaway? Then there's issues with that too, because we don't have time for throwaways. Like I said, the Padres playoff odds have steadily decreased from that, in my opinion, bloated 38% all the way down to being the same as the Diamondbacks. And now, following this weekend, I might as well throw it out there that the Diamondbacks playoff chances are now at 37.2%, while the Padres are at 12.3%. It really does feel like that was it. And considering all of that, I don't understand why Rich Hill gets a start in this game. Now, granted, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't his fault primarily. He goes 5 innings, he gives up 3 earned runs on 2 hits and walks 1 and, strikes out 3. It was actually a pretty okay performance from him. It wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. It's just that he gives up a big Tommy Pham home run in the top of the 4th, and then a Gabriel Moreno home run in the top of the 5th. And the only run that the Padres score, of course, is from Trent Grisham, his single allowing Jay Cronenworth to score. But I think that when the season's on the line, I don't understand why you're starting Rich Hill. I don't understand why Pedro Avila isn't getting more look as the starter to start off the game. And I get it, it's important to just fill innings, but if this is a team allegedly that's trying to make the playoffs, then I don't understand why Rich Hill, especially when you're going to get an off day. I don't understand why he's necessarily starting. I don't know if that's Melvin. I don't know if that's Preller, but it's just very... I wish they would show some urgency. Because, yes, you do need to save your players. Yes, you can't just use Josh Hader every day. I get it. But at some point, can you push it a little bit and be like, you know what, Josh? We need you for your 3rd day in a row. We don't think you've thrown too many pitches. We're going to need you for your 3rd day in a row. If you can get him to agree with it. I understand he's a pending free agent and all that stuff plays a role in this. But I just don't understand that. Why am I still seeing in key spots relievers that don't have good matchups going up against the Diamondbacks? I talked about this past weekend how Tommy Pham, I predicted he would be my home run play. I don't even know if I picked him for home run. I just picked him for over on hits, and he kills the Padres. I said that home run already, and he had a little bit of a controversy with a video of him yelling at a fan that I'm not going to get into too much, but like, I don't understand why. We'll get into this in a second. Like, Michael Waldron is still in for that at bat. I don't understand. Like, bring in a reliever who's really good against right-handed batters. They have some of those. Scott Barlow's okay against right-handed batters. Like, just bring in someone. Michael Waldron's pretty unproven. So it's not Melvin's fault. I really don't believe that. I just don't think you go from what happened last year to getting more talent and then you just forgot how to manage. I just don't believe that. It's just, I have to admit, some of the bullpen decisions, I understand why some slander has been thrown his way. I still think that it would be ridiculous to fire him and not Preller. If you're of the opinion that both of them should be fired, I think that makes a little bit more sense. But for me, can we show some urgency? You know, it's not May anymore. Heck, it's not June anymore. It's not July anymore. It's post-deadline. You have no moves to make. This is it. And you're like, yeah, let's just throw out Rich Hill again? Now, granted, this wasn't the biggest problem of the game. The Padres only score 1 run. They lose 3-1 in this one. Like, that's the big reason. But it's still just really frustrating that they're unable to hit, Kyle Nelson, and unable to hit, what's his name, Justin Martinez. And of course, as usual, in the bottom of the 9th, they have the top of the order. Tatis gets a walk, but then Soto hits into a fielder's choice. Machado strikes out looking. Bogarts walks, allowing, Jake Cronenworth to come up. He strikes out. It's amazing how many times the top of the order has been in either what literally feels like a last chance. Just if you're watching games, I understand if you're a fan. And this is like they need to have a big moment here, or literally this is their last chance and they, this is the last chance for a comeback. The amount of times at the top of the order with Xander, Manny, Tatis, Soto, and then Kim, like the fact that has maybe come through like what feels like 3 times all year. I can't name them. I'm just exaggerating. It's the San Diego Padres, man. That's the San Diego Padres. Before we keep talking, guys, about the misery of this weekend, because that's what we got to do out here on this podcast, I guess, let me just take a second to talk to you about Game Time. All right. Maybe you're one of those people still trying to catch a Padres game. Maybe you're making some last-minute changes in your schedule. Well, let me tell you, Game Time makes all those last-minute decisions a lot less stressful. You can get your tickets over at Game Time. Last-minute tickets and flash deals are there. You can find tickets for every event, by the way. Maybe you don't want to go to a Padres game. Maybe you're disgusted with them. Totally understandable. Don't worry. They also got you covered with football games, and you want to go see Messi for Inter Miami, I think is the team. Like, go check him out. He's scoring 3 goals a game. He's outrageous, and he's older. It's awesome stuff. Maybe you want to go to concerts. Maybe you want some T Swift action, some theater, some comedy stuff. Guess what? They've got you covered for all sorts of events, guys. Lowest prices guaranteed. Event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all sorts of cool stuff. And they even give you images of the seat views just as a little treat for you guys because they're fantastic. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right now up to the day of the event. So go check it out, guys. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. And we're back, everybody, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Don't forget to check us out on all the socials and the SiriusXM app. Just type in the Padres and listen to the live broadcasts of the games and such. Let's talk about the next game, ladies and gentlemen. That was Friday's game. It's the one positive from this series that we're able to win. Shouts to the Padres in this one. They are able to get a victory. Thank you. Good job, guys, on realizing that, we're in a tough spot. They win 4-0, and there's not really much to say for this game other than the fact that it was really, really fun at one point. And I think that this game, there's not much to talk about this game in terms of what actually happened, but in terms of just the kind of, what's the word to describe it? Kind of like just what the series meant, I think. And you saw a little bit of a taste of that. And what I mean by that is, on Thursday, like I said, or I'm sorry, on Friday, they won 4-0 behind a very, very good Seth Lugo start, which is probably going to be forgotten based on what happened in this game. 6 innings, 5 hits, no earned run, 3 walks, and 9 strikeouts across 100 pitches. So Seth Lugo showed up. Scott Barlow comes in. He doesn't allow anything. Robert Suarez comes in. He's technically credited with the win. Josh Hader comes in for the bottom of the 9th. Thankfully, they used him for once. And don't get me wrong, it was a 4-0 lead, so it wasn't like, red, DEFCON 1 or anything. But even in a non-safe situation, it's good that they still used him, because I think there's been a lot of non-save situations that they don't use him in, and I think that they should be using him because, he's a rental right now, guys. Like, you might as well use him. So they do well there. And then their offense, while not really doing much for the whole game, comes through at the end, and it was very nice. It comes from Ha-Seong Kim driving a single to center, allowing Jose Azocar and Ben Gamble to score. That's right. This inning, this rally inning starts off with not the top of the lineup, because the top of the lineup refuses to show up basically ever. It starts off by Gary Sanchez getting hit by a pitch, and then Ben Gamble getting a single. Shouts to the legend Ben Gamble, who made a spectacular catch the inning before, in which he fell into the stands, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was him. Was it him? Yeah, I think it was, right? Is this the same game? I might be getting my games mixed up, but he makes a spectacular Jeter-esque catch falling into the stands. Really, really electric stuff. And then he follows that up with a single. Trent Grisham gets a sacrifice. Thank the Lord. I was just worried that a double play was coming. Then Ha-Seong Kim drives in the go-ahead runs, making it 2-0. And then Fernando Tatis. Here's what I mean about what the game meant, like, emotionally, and the feeling of the game mattering more than the result and the stats. Tatis hits a home run to deep center, 440 feet. And I think I saw someone mention this on Twitter. I'm not sure who. I was mostly scrolling on my own account. I mean, it was a Friday after all, guys. You know me. I'm taking it easy. That Tatis hits this home run that essentially it feels like it seals the game. And he's been due, right? Like, he's been due. His expected stats, his weighted on base, all that stuff suggests that. Don't get me wrong, I have complained about Tatis. Just not complained. I have critiqued him and said he needs to see more pitches, and he's swinging at everything. He's forcing the issue, I think, a little bit too much. But he's also getting a little bit unlucky based on how hard he hits the ball, and he's the Julio Rodriguez robbery from last week when he tricked the whole crowd that he didn't have it, right? Like, he's been getting robbed a lot, on top of, I think, struggling a little bit to get back into his MVP groove. So him hitting that home run, like, felt like, oh man, yeah, he needed that. And he does an awesome bat flip. He does like a fist, punch towards the ground. I don't even know what to call it. He's super pumped, looking at the dugout. And I really think that this was a fascinating moment for the Padres, because this is a team that is, what's their current record? Crap. What the heck is our record? 59-66. There's 7 games below 500. At the time, they were like 5 games below 500. And it's a home game, sure, but a guy hitting a go-ahead home run when you're already up, it's not like it was a walk-off win or anything like that, in the bottom of the 8th, and him getting so pumped, and the crowd losing its mind, Don Orsillo himself losing his mind on the call, shouting Nando, as he always does. We love him very much. That shows you how much this team has let down its fan base, I think. That's what it really... If you're getting pumped about a one individual game, this guy hitting a home run that's not even a game winner, and you're below 500, like, significantly, and you're probably not making the playoffs, and it's been a disaster, and everyone's losing their minds for this guy over that hit, that shows you really how massively disappointing this team has been. It's nuts. You don't get that type of reaction from teams that are winning. Go look at the Milwaukee fan base. Go look at all those teams that I love slandering on this podcast. I mean, it's just such a shame, And my heart goes out to everyone in San Diego who has gone to games, especially. My heart goes out to any Padres fan who's gone to games. But especially for the people in San Diego, like everyone's showing up. They have one of the best attendances in baseball. They had like the longest sellout streak at home for the longest time. And then this is how the team repays them. They're ready to explode and ride with you. And to be honest with you, it feels like they waited a long time. This isn't a Yankees Phillies thing where after 2 weeks of bad play to start the season, everyone was booing and jeering at players and doing all that stuff. No, I feel like the fan base was really damn patient this year. And then finally they started turning things around and then Machado snapped a little bit. It's unbelievable. Team deserves something, man. That's what we should have had. We should have had more moments like this all year. And it's a shame. It's a damn shame that we just have to take what we can in a vacuum instead of being excited about the playoffs because the team never showed up. Never. Not once all year did this team show up. And it sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. Did not show up. And it stinks because the interest was there. Everyone was rooting for them. And you see right here, if they're going to lose their mind over what amounts to a fairly meaningless like moment in the grand calculus of things, imagine what they would have been like if you were just 500. If you were one game below 500 right now. If you were just maybe in a playoff spot. Imagine how much more nuts people would be going. It's crazy. It's crazy. And now, guys, I'm going to take a sip of water, and after these messages, we will finish up the podcast talking about these last two games. So stay tuned. And we're back, everybody, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. I've been spending a lot of time talking about these two games. Didn't expect that, but it's okay. We're finishing things up with this doubleheader that occurred on Saturday because of the hurricane thing. Both games getting pushed to today, which helped me out because it helped me address some things that I had at home anyway. Just some private matters I had to deal with. So it was kind of cool that I had Sunday off. But in this game, I'm going to kind of go past this fairly quickly because I already addressed it at the top of the pod with the bullpen decisions from this team. First of all, shouts to the Padres actually, for once, not giving up after they get outscored to start the game. Michael Waldron is the starter that the Padres, or I'm sorry, Michael Waldron's the name of the guy who wrote the Ant-Man and Loki series. My apologies, guys. Matt Waldron. Man, I'm a mess. Matt Waldron gets a start in this game. He gives up 5 earned runs. Wasn't that bad. I mean, especially considering, no Waka just came back, no Musgrove, all that stuff. It was fine. But then, and like as I mentioned before with the whole Rich Hill fiasco, like that's, it's a little annoying. But Matt Waldron actually not that terrible. Like 5 walks. He, until the end when he gave up a huge go-ahead home run to Tommy Pham, who else than Tommy Pham, who hates us. And gave them the 5-3 lead. He had been okay. I mean, yeah, he gave up some singles in the top of the first inning, and he gave up a Christian Walker ground out that amounted to a run, but he'd been okay. The Padres battled back. They had Ha-Seong Kim hit a home run. They had Manny Machado hit a home run. And then Matt Carpenter comes in, and my mom actually like gasped when she saw that he was in the lineup for this game. And she's like, oh, maybe if you give him 2 weeks off, it'll be effective. And he gets an RBI. You also get a Manny Machado home run in the bottom of the 8th because Machado has loved hitting big shots only when the team is already down and they don't need them in the bottom of the 8th to amount to 6-4. I don't understand how they didn't bring in a reliever for Tommy Pham. A guy who anyone watching Padres games, anyone who is living, breathing, watching this team knows Tommy Pham hates us. Talked about this before the weekend. His slash line against them was like 290 with a 350 on base, and he's slugging like 500 against us. Started last year with the Reds. If anybody remembers that Red series when he hit one to like the third deck. Where did that come from, right? He hates us, and I don't understand how Matt Waldron was still left in there. He's not like that quality of an arm. I don't know why you don't just bring in a reliever. Yes, in May, you don't do that because you have to conserve your pitchers and whatnot. But why aren't you just bringing in guys who might have a better matchup, especially when Matt Waldron's like 90 pitches into the game or whatever it was, and he's not like that experienced of a starter? Bring in Cosgrove. Heck, bring in Barlow. I don't care. Bring in someone who strikes out righties, please. And then instead he gets the home run, and then they get one more run later on, and that's the end of that game. So again, I already alluded to at the top, I understand this feeling of frustration that the Padres are not like pushing the button. In fact, I think if they were like really going to be more, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the right word for this. If they wanted to like really push the engine, get things going, like I don't understand why they didn't pull Philadelphia and maybe put Xander Bogaerts lower in the lineup. Worked for Trey Turner. Trey Turner's hitting like 400 with a 188 WRC plus ever since they did that. And ever since the Philly fans like did a standing ovation for him. But still, like that's crazy. So that's one game that they end up losing, and then they get absolutely creamed in a game that they really need in order to even up the series, at least get out of the series unscathed and have nothing change overall and split things. Yu Darvish gives up 4 earned runs in 5 innings. His ERA is 4.35 on the season. Does get 7 strikeouts, but still. And then Nick Martinez, which I tweeted about, very hilariously, comes into the game trying to, I guess, keep the lead to what was 4-1 at the time, and then Tommy Pham gets a double. Again, just that guy hates us. Christian Walker gets a walk. Alek Thomas walks. And then after what felt like a 40-minute intermission, as they're talking to Nick Martinez on what to do, gives up a grand slam to Gabriel Moreno. So, look, Martinez has literally never had a normal outing. He actually hasn't been that bad. He's had plenty of moments where he's pretty good. But season on the line, you cannot give up more runs here, and then that's what they do. And then, of course, also worth mentioning, Padres only score 1 run against, who is it, Brandon Fate? I still don't know how to say this guy's name. I forgot. Who was it for the Diamondbacks that started this game? Let me see that real quick because my phone isn't loading. Let's see here. It was Bryce Jarvis? No, that wasn't him. Why can't I just see the stats, you silly little goose? There we go. The starter for the Diamondbacks was Scott McHugh, who, it was a bullpen game. That's even worse for the Padres. They had a bullpen game for the D-backs, a team that has struggled mightily with bullpen. Silences the Padres offense multiple times. With runners on, they can't get anything going, and that's the season. Really, really rough. I'm going to stop talking about it because I don't want to make things too miserable, but, I mean, this is just like, it's one of those things where the Padres have been bad, but, and if you've watched them, it feels worse. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the amount of times. I already talked about the top of the order, 3-1. They had a moment. They had plenty of moments in this game to try and make a comeback, and they don't do it. Was it Thursday's game as well that I didn't mention that Gary, I think, struck out to lose the game, or Trent Grisham struck out to lose the game? I think it was one of those, bases loaded, all that stuff. Can you for once get a comeback? Or I think it was Saturdays. Yeah, it was Saturdays. My apologies. When they lose 6-4, they make a little bit of a comeback at the end, but then they don't do anything. That's just what they do. And I could have told you that that's what was going to happen, by the way. I could have told you. I think anyone could have told you. They just don't show up. I mean, it's just iconic stuff from the Padres. When you really think about it, it's iconic. Before we kind of leave this podcast, though, guys, I want to talk about a little bit of news. And that's the Padres made a lot of farm move sort of activity this past weekend, and specifically yesterday, I guess, because, we didn't have any game yesterday. They had to announce some news. Mass movement, this according to Jeff Sanders' San Diego Tribune and multiple other people, including some sources of my own that I heard that this was going to happen. Mass movement up to the Padres system. Ethan Salas, Robbie Slenthman, Graham Pauley, Jacob Maurice, Nathan Martorella, all to Double-A. And then Dylan Lesko and Samuel Zavala are going to high Single-A for the Tin Caps. And Dylan Head is heading to low Single-A. The biggest news here is Ethan Salas. And on the one hand, it's exciting that like a 17-year-old is going to be in Double-A already. And that just in general, that a 17-year-old has been this effective and that he's on most people's top 100 lists in like the top 20 at the like lowest, right? Like that's incredible, especially for a catcher, and catcher's a hard, position to gauge sometimes. But my reaction to this was, why? And I'm not a big prospect guy. Granted, I don't know how all of this goes. Like, I understand that. But for me, when I look at this, I say, hold on a second. Already? He's played like 9 games in high A ball, and he struggled. His OPS was about 837, I believe. I'm going to bring up his stats right now. His OPS was pretty good in Single A. He'd been doing well in there, in his rookie ball, right? Like, he'd been doing a lot better. Everyone had been talking about it. I don't see his OPS. There we go. 837 OPS in low A. really cool stuff, especially for a guy so young. Him to be playing amateur ball like this and doing well is incredible. But then in high A, in just 9 games and only catching 5 games, 472 OPS. Struggled mightily, only hitting 200 with a 243 on base, 229 slugging. Like, he was worse, significantly worse. And for some reason, the Padres thought, let's promote him now to Double A. Don't get me wrong. I don't know everything about these things. I don't know exactly what's the best route for every prospect. I don't have a crystal ball, as Billy Beane would say in Moneyball. I don't know what this kid's future is, but I don't trust this team with the way that they've managed their prospects lately. I'm not talking about trades either. I think trades is a separate issue, like trading your farm players. I don't like how seemingly every single time the Padres have had an exciting prospect, with the exception of Mackenzie Gore, back when he was with the Padres, who just kind of like cratered and something happened to him in the minors and he just forgot how to pitch for a little bit. Then he gets called up, was really good for a little bit. Then he's now in the Nationals. But for the most part, the Padres keep calling up everyone who shows a smidgen of promise immediately, even if they're not ready. Luis Campusano was one of the first ones that they did this. They made him debut after he barely hit above Double A, if I'm not mistaken. And this is back in 2020. And I've said this before, and I make this joke a lot, but it's incredible that they thought it was a good idea to have him pinch hit against Kenley Jansen to start off his career. Just truly, truly unhinged stuff from the Padres. Yeah, he'd barely hit above high A, Luis Campusano. And then in Peoria, he struggled, and then they bring him up to the Padres, and then they bring him up for what, 1 game in 2020? And then they send him back down. Then they bring him up again, and then he hits about below 100 in like 11 games. Then they send him down to AAA. It's like this up and down movement. It's like they needed him. And at the time when they first called him up, it's Francisco Mejia and Austin Hedges, and then you have Austin Nola and all that stuff. So they're desperate for catching. But like desperate to the point where you're going to ruin this, you're going to mess with this kid's particular like development. They do that. They did it with, some people might even argue Ryan Weathers a little bit, but more, they do it with CJ Abrams, who is a top-level prospect, but he barely played above, like, high A, and then they call him up to Double A in half a second, and then all of a sudden he's on the Major League roster, and then shocker, he struggles. It's almost like they think that they can replicate that Tatis success, that, like, very rare young kid who comes in and is immediately good, was just ready. It's almost like they thought they could replicate that. And that's really frustrating. It shows you that there's a lack of awareness in this front office, and farm development or whatever, that there's a lack of patience, and that they're so desperate for anyone that can help them out with their depth that they call up anyone who's exciting. Like, I swear they're about to bring up this kid, Ethan Salas, and then they're going to send Luis Campusano down. Like, I don't understand, like, what's going on here. So, and I understand it's not like, Double A competition that he's never faced people in their, like, late 20s. I know that. But I know that the real jump is Double A to Triple A. Like, that seems to be the jump, like, the difference between, rookie ball and high A versus double is less of a giant discrepancy versus Double A and Triple A, at least from what I hear. Like, that's the big jump. And when you're successful there, that's what helps you get called to the majors. But I just... How are you why are you forcing this? He's 17. I don't understand why you're forcing this. You literally have a solid, not better than solid, great catching situation currently. And I know that this doesn't mean that they're calling up next week to the Major League roster, but it just shows you, like, why? Why? If you told me that they were calling up Jackson Merrill, that would be ridiculous, but it would also at least be like, okay, like, yeah, they're really desperate because they're trying to make a playoff spot. And, Merrill's been, fermenting and developing in the farm a little bit longer in Double A and et cetera than some other guys, right? But it's just crazy to me. You have Gary Sanchez. You have Luis Campusano. You finally gave the kid a damn chance, and he's been a really quality batter. Even if he's, raw defensively, he's got to work on that stuff. Maybe he'll get better in the offseason. Who knows? But it reeks of desperation. It reminds me exactly of the Abrams thing. They called him up, in my opinion, too early. I didn't hate the move when they announced it. I thought that they had a potential to be an interesting, platoon with him and Kim at short. But I was also, before it even happened, I was like, you have Ha-Seong Kim. You signed him. Give him a chance. Let him man the position. And then they did. And then look what happened. And then look what happened this year. So I just don't understand this impatience. When you have these stars on the major league roster, you shouldn't be this impatient. And that's through one, being impatient, and two, not having any depth. And that's the fault of the general management and the front office. Not the fault of Bob Melvin that he has to decide between using, Tim Hill or Luis Garcia sometimes, and no matter which, it's just both results. It's like the two-headed coin. What's it called? Double-sided coin, whatever you call it. It has heads on both sides. That's what it's like. It's just you're dead either way. With Melvin sometimes with these bullpen decisions, they only have the worst thing happen to them. And again, I know I'm running on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's just frustrating. Like, I don't understand why they're doing this. And I understand, okay, well, he's got some development. Some people responded to my tweet when I raged about this a little bit over at LO_Padres. And yes, that's another reason to go follow that account. If you reply to me, sometimes I use those replies on the show. Someone brought up Ben Gamble, apologist. Oh, Josh Landis. So what's going on, man? He said, honestly, I think they believe in the bat so much that I think they are okay with a slight offensive regression in order to get him catching higher caliber arms. I know the reports are him lacking defensively, not from a calling game standpoint, but a receiving standpoint. It's a totally fair point. I understand wanting to get him experience. I just don't understand why. Like, the move up to high A, I think, was aggressive, right? And it made sense. I mean, he'd done well. He had an 837 OPS and rookie ball. Like, he was doing good. But then immediately, and after you had seen that he was struggling at high A, you're moving him up. It almost makes me feel like he's like, all right, I'm getting ready to trade this kid, and I want everyone to know that he's closer to the majors than he actually might be. I don't know. I know that's an exaggeration. I know that's like DEFCON 1 type of reaction. That's hyperbole, whatever. But you know what? This is my podcast, and sometimes I can do that. But I just what a miserable weekend. And Snelling and all these guys, like, I just don't trust that the Padres are moving guys up based on the last few years, that they're moving them up because they're ready and that they want them to get experience versus like, we're moving them up because we need to kickstart this now because we need to start winning now. It's really frustrating. And there might even be questions about, you had Ha-Seong Kim side through next year and you had, you just signed Xander Bogaerts and then you also had Ha-Seong Kim. Like, why are you, and then you have Jackson Merrill. Like, why are you making all these moves at once? Why'd you give Bogaerts a giant deal when you have Jackson Merrill coming up? It just makes you think. Makes you wonder. But whatever. I don't know. I just feel like doesn't feel like there's a cohesive plan here sometimes. On top of the winning and on top of the management. So, whatever. That about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, guys. The only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres. For the rest of the week, cool stuff. Going to be doing my crossovers with Millard as usual, doing a fantasy draft. Might do a little crossover with Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins. I have to see if I can get a hold of him. He's on that whole opposite time zone and whatnot. And then just talking about other stuff. And then I think we didn't get to it too much today, but going to be talking more about Ha-Seong Kim and like my favorite moments from him throughout the season. Going to try and be positive and just relish the past a little bit because I just feel like there's not much else to say about this current Major League roster. Going to be doing that. You could check out my article on Ha-Seong Kim over at Just Baseball. That just came out like, I think during the course of me recording this podcast. So if you want my written word, go check that out. I'm going to be doing very, very fun written stuff for that site soon. Some not Padres related, but some a little bit. So look forward to that. And until next time, stay safe and of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.